I'm Keel Cerrone Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. And before we get into it, if you are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Aryan Race. Now, this episode may come to a shock to many of you, as we're going to be discussing the origins of the Aryan race and the true history. So I suggest everyone put their personal feelings to the side and just go along for the ride, as this topic may be a little heavy-handed for some and sensitive for others. Nonetheless, it is a necessary topic that needs to be had. So I highly recommend everyone, before we jump into it, to just keep an open mind and hold all comments until the end of the show. Now, without further ado, let us get into it. I've been sitting on this one for a minute. Alrighty. Now, this was written April 15th, 2023 by Carrie Sullivan. Debunking the Aryan myth and separating fact from fiction. Today, the word Aryan has become synonymous with all sorts of negative connotations, including theories of racial superiority and white supremacy. This association has led to a widespread misunderstanding of the term's origins and meaning, and resulting baseless concepts related to a supposed Aryan race have been co-opted and misused by racist ideologies. Only in the late 19th, 20th centuries did Aryan become equated with Germanic and Nordic peoples. Prior to this corruption, Aryan referred to an archaic language whose speakers are thought to have spread and influenced languages throughout the Indian subcontinent. I'll repeat that for you. Aryan referred to archaic language whose speakers are thought to have spread and influenced languages throughout the Indian subcontinent. Over time, and largely due to Nazi ideology, Aryans have become associated with racial hierarchies that considered white skinned blondes and blue eyed peoples as superior. This served as a very useful propaganda tool for coaching racist sentiments and seemingly scientific or historic yet completely false realities. The Nazi regime misappropriation of the term Aryan resulted in a legacy of hatred, discrimination, and persecution that continues to impact society today. To counteract the harmful misconceptions that have been propagated in the name of the Aryan label, it is essential to understand its true meaning and historical context. Recognizing the origins of the term and how it has been misused in the past can help us move towards a more inclusive and equitable society that respects diversity and rejects racist ideologies. So I think as we delve forward, it's important for us to kind of break down some of these concepts. So, let's understand what is white supremacy, because I don't think anyone really understands what the concept of white supremacy is. So, let's learn a little bit about these various concepts that are being used by various racial organizations and paramilitary organizations. So this one here is written by August 15th, 2017, and it's titled "Why is Odin the New God of Choice for White Supremacists?" White supremacists. So I think we gotta understand the whole. In order to understand the whole idea of the Aryan race, I think we have to understand where do these concepts of white supremacists and and the ideas that prominated through Nazism. What was the purpose of these concepts, and why are they still being used today? I think it's important that we kind of break it all down. All right, that's just bizarre right there. Okay. Those who once worshipped the great gods of the North would be ashamed if they knew their faith was used to support such hatred and violence as witnessed in Charlottesville, Virginia on 12th August 2017. There is no evidence of discrimination or racial violence in the days before the North found the cross. So why are white supremacists now turning to ancient Nordic gods to support their ideology? And I think what's interesting about this is I don't know how many people here, my listeners and whatnot, have caught the show Vikings, but that TV show, when it became a hit, even around that time, you would notice a lot of those you know quote unquote you know white supremacist marches and whatnot have very similar haircuts and tattoos. So I find it very interesting how mythology is being used in propaganda. The events that transpired in Charlottesville, which left 3 dead and 36 injured, was a brutal, unwarranted assault on people who were guilty of nothing more than being what the white supremacists wanted them to be: white. Okay. Now, I should preface this as before we go forward. This is all just for, like I said, I'm just here to understand the whole concept of the Aryan race. I'm not here to promote any type of ideologies or anything like that. This is all just educational purpose to just learn and understand that. So I'm just prefacing that before we go forward, because even though I'm a man from the Caribbean, this will not be, if the first time I had been called a white supremacist, which is kind of a hilarious concept when you even have like Cornel West, who's running for president, being called a white supremacist. But it's fascinating times when you can be a dark skinned brother and be called a white supremacist. But I just want to preface that before we move forward. For YouTube purposes, we condemn anything of that matter of Nazism, of racism, of bigotry, all that fun jazz. And this is all just for educational purposes and just kind of understanding these whole concepts. Because as I was kind of skimming through a lot of these concepts, I'm under the impression as well that we can also kind of lump in some of the more new age movements into the whole supremacy ideology. So we'll be getting into a little bit of that. So just prefacing that for everybody. Much love to the Rumble people over there. I see you guys watching. Please feel free to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and feel free to share the stream. Okay. Soldiers of Odin. Soldiers of Odin, sons of Odin, or Odinists, are what this racial conglomeration of white supremacists call themselves, Odinisms. For those unfamiliar with the term, is a rising religious sect following the ancient gods Odin, a sky god and a prophet god, and Thor, and god known for his value in warfare. Both Odin and Thor have been contestants for the title of father of the gods or chief of the gods. More evidence appears to claim Odin in this role, which is likely why the name was chosen. Those who follow this sect value it for the same reason Adolf Hitler valued the Aryan ancestry of Germans. Odinism values European culture and presumes that to be white is to be right. Now, we can this is no different than, Black Lives Matter. This is no different than what you're seeing right now with the LGBTQ movements. So that's what I was meaning when when we read through this. Keep in mind about the modern day movements that you're seeing going on right now, and and how they're no different than this movement, these groups. So I just, when I was skimming through all this, it's fascinating to know the parallels. I guess you could say the difference is with the Black Lives Matter group. They don't have a mythological god that they are worshiping. I mean, theirs is who they're worshiping. His name is Karl Marx, but that's a whole different story. Yet even Odinism is a warped American version of not only Hitler's racial beliefs, but of both the ancient polytheistic faith and the 20th century neo-pagan religion that valued Odin and Thor, and the Astaru fellowship. Like so many religious sects, Odinism found its origins in a peaceful religion that was gradually perverted. And think about that. Let's repeat that right here. Like so many religious sects, Odinism found its origins in a peaceful religion that was gradually perverted. Now, we can say the exact same thing about many of the organizations that we see here in the West and in the United States. I mean, I'm I am for everyone's freedom of rights and freedom of expression, but we have to also acknowledge the fact that it's clear that excuse me, I had to cough. It's clear that we look at the LGBTQ movement. It has been co-opted by very nefarious malice and very grotesque individuals who have ulterior motives for that movement. And if you're one for social media and whatnot, you're well aware of libs of TikTok and all that stuff, Andy Ngo, all those kind of people. Timpu, whoever, have been, constantly discussing the culture war and talking about the infiltration of these groups. And it's no different than Black Lives Matter. That group has been infiltrated as well, and it's, its own, quote unquote founders, have been, found out as, as grifters, as con men, and as Marxists, and it's all right there for you. And that's why when as we go through this, you're gonna see a lot of parallels. Um, Maybe not as much as I do, maybe not, I don't know, but we'll see. Let's continue. Here we have a picture of the Norse god Odin enthroned, flanked by his two wolves, Jerry and Freki, and his two ravens, Hugin and Munin, and holding his spear Gungnir. I apologize if I mispronounced any of that. The resurgence of paganism. Following the rise of the holistic faith called Wicca in the 1900s, various strands of contemporary paganism arose. Celtic Wicca, Fairy Wicca, and Gardenia Wicca are among the strands, in the same way that Christianity's branches off into Episcopal, Baptist, and so on. Among these branches of Wicca arose the Asura Fellowship. In 1972, a man called Bjorn Beinstenson chose the path of the pre-Christian North as his faith. The Astru Fellowship is very similar to Odinism, or rather, Odinism drew heavily from the Astru Fellowship, predominantly in the value of Odin or Thor. After this, the practices have little in common. The Asatru Fellowship follow the ancient gods of the north through peaceful outdoor gatherings. Odinism, on the other hand, has become a haven for white supremacists and values the heritage of the white man in the name of the white gods, rather than the Eastern religious leader called Jesus of Nazareth. And this is no different than when you look at whether it's Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ movement or even Antifa. You know, in those groups, you have people who are atheists. You're gonna have people who probably practice Wicca and things like that. So they're literally. This is what's fascinating to me personally, that there literally is a correlation between these groups. Like, if you were to get all the white supremacists and all the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa and these, like, LGBTQ extremists all together in one room, they probably have a lot in common. Oh man, because they're all practicing the same ideology. They're just using it for different ulterior motives. Oh man. And here we have, and you can even add the environmentalists to this group as well. Uh, Here we have a picture, and it shows a paganism festival, the Beltane Fire Festival celebrations. And you can even look at what's that big thing that happens in, not Coachella, the other one, the one that happened recently. What is it called? All the tech people go to it. I can't think of its name. It recently happened. It got flooded and all that craziness. I can't remember the name of it. But even there, you have all of these practices. You have all these people who are part of these various groups, and they all have the same kind of ideology. Whether it's atheism or paganism or technoism, whatever you want to call it. Um, and then the next thing you know, they're all unifying in various ways of protesting and harassments. It's fascinating. The alteration of Norse religion. The Norse religion is one of the few religions that can be so easily reinterpreted. Likely one of the reasons the Asatru Fellowship was able to thrive in the modern world. One of the difficulties of understanding the faith in its totality is that the pre Christian Norsemen did not write down their own faith. Their stories and manuscripts that survive were dictated centuries later by Christians who had heard of the old tales. Yet in writings down the pagan beliefs, the scribes needed to understand it first. The only way to do that was to look at the religion through the lens of Christianity. Therefore, much of what is known from the literature itself a perversion of the late medieval authors. Those who have taken the time to understand the medieval literature and ancient values are aware of what was truly important to the followers of Odin: wisdom, memory, wisdom, memory, and honorable victory. Can white supremacists really claim that what happened in Charlottesville in 2017 or in Germany in the 1940s was in any way honorable? We can say the same thing about Black Lives Matter during the Summer of Love. Was any of that honorable? Destroying family businesses, billions of dollars in destruction. Was any of that honorable? And in the name of uh, fighting racial injustice and all that other fun jazz and nonsense. Perhaps it's better to distinguish Odinists from the Asatru Fellowship from the ancient pagans. Perhaps such a separation will help preserve the dignity and strength of the pre-Christian Norsemen. But how can one distinguish the three faiths when Odinism is so rigidly borrows and then mutilates the ancient symbolism, the same way Hitler did with the swastika, once a symbol of sun, light, and strength? Now, if you're interested in that, check out my episode on the lost kingdom of Shambhala and the Nazi connection. We go into the origins of the swastika. Here we have a picture of white supremacists standing by the statue of Robert E. Lee before the crash in Charlottesville. Now, as we have been aware of now, especially since the Ukraine war and everything that's been going on recently, whether it's like the Patriot Front or whatever that group is, we have a lot of these quote unquote white supremacy groups that are just springing up out of nowhere with perfectly fine Nazi flags, perfectly fine shoes, all wearing the same clothing, all this fun jazz. And oh yeah, 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 they're just they've been around forever, just these white supremacy groups. But as we learn, and as information has been uncovered, most likely they're probably fed ops that are being used to incite and divide. No different than what the Black Lives Matter groups do. If you're going to be foolish to think that, Antifa and all of those people aren't being funded by Democrats or, George Soros, what have you, or I mean, the fact that our current Vice P did actually bail out Black Lives Matter rioters who destroyed family businesses, um, in the name of, their black gods. I guess who would be Karl Marx, but I digress. But if you can see the similarities, it's right there in front of us. Okay, white gods. The majority of those who have adopted Odinism as a banner of white supremacy have not examined the medieval literature, the ancient rune stones, or the archaeological evidence of the North. Odinists appear to be concerned with only one fact: that the northern gods were white. This is no different than Black Lives Matters group, or where the white man is the devil, and black people are superior. I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but it's no different. Very similar to what you're seeing with the LGBTQ movement, Antifa, the environmental movement. Which, ironic with the environmental movement, a lot of those movements are funded by big oil. This is the my gosh, it's effing unreal. An article discussing white supremacy from Rebel News cites a man who claimed that only white people are allowed into Valhalla, the hall where the bravest of fallen warriors eat, train, and wait for the final battle called Ragnarok. Yet there is not a slick of evidence that Odin only favored the white men in the pre Christian North. The only proof is that those of the North were white, therefore, statistically, Odin's Hall would have been made up of white men, but this is an assumption rather than a fact. Okay, okay. Now we're getting into some nonsense here. This is sounding a little woke. All right, or I shouldn't say woke, but this is sounding a little too neoliberal here for a little bit. I mean, it would be a fact. We're talking about Scandinavia. We're talking about Iceland. And yeah, there might be some connections between China and the Vikings, and I may cover that in a later date. But come on now. Who wrote this? Asian. Okay, well, you guys, come on. Come on. You know better. You know better. You know better. What are you telling me? Are you telling me that there were, Muslims that were practicing North mythology? Come on. Let's not don't be you're losing me now. All right. Now you're sounding like a revisionist. All right. This is getting ridiculous, okay? What's that show that what was it? Vikings Valhalla or something like that? Where they took a Norse king who was a man and he was white and they made him a black woman in the Viking era. Uh, It's like, what are we doing here? All right, or in uh in Netflix in the Roman TV show, they had black people in Ireland, and I'm like, well, if they're from Egypt, okay, that would make sense because there were Celtic mercenaries who were fighting in Egypt. So um, what dynasty was it? Dolmac? It was the dynasty before Cleopatra. But anyways, like there are historical evidence to it, but like, come on now, don't tell me that they're that. Okay, anyways, enough of a Ronin rant. Let's let's get back into it. All right. Here we have a picture of Valkyrie bearing a hero to Valhalla. White supremacists and Odinists say that only white people can enter Valhalla. Okay, well, if we're gonna go based off mythology and of the time period, yes. Okay. All right. I don't know if ISIS or any of those cats are gonna be allowing uh you know white Americans into their holy world. I have no idea, but this is getting a little ridiculous because we're talking about a mythology here, all right? But it's no different than any other kind of racial group saying, only black people can't go into heaven or any of that kind of nonsense. It's very similar to the ideologies of Black Lives Matters and LGBTQ. I mean, I'm just saying, like, there are so many similarities between these groups. It's starting to hard to distinguish them. It should be made clear that not all white supremacists are Odinists, and those who worship Odin are not necessarily Odinists or white supremacists. What is clear, however, is that the followers of the ancient religion, which some white supremacists are turning to, could not have been more colorblind if they tried. They could not have been more tolerant of other religions for that matter. Religious intolerance was a minute concern before the days of Christianity, and no particular race was allocated as lesser than another. Prejudices have always existed, but the extent to which those prejudices have evolved is not aligned with the umbrella phase that followed. Well, yeah, I mean, well, obviously because back then they weren't concerned about race. They were, I mean, you're not raiding a village or a city, because there are white people there who are, of a lighter complexion than yours. You're doing it for their resources. And the whole race thing, that doesn't equate back in those days. So I don't know why the author of this article, is probably a good idea they didn't put their name on it. Oh wait, no, this was by Riley Winters. Okay, Riley. Hit or miss. You had a couple of hits there, and then you had a lot of misses. Uh, when you started acting as if North mythology that was practiced in predominantly Europe, in mostly, in Scandinavian countries and cultures, that there would also be like some people from South America hanging out with Odin and Zeus. Like, come on, let's not be ridiculous here. All right, but at the same time, we know that, in Netflix universe, and in, the Queen of England at one point was a black woman. This It's so funny the way they are constantly trying to rewrite history, to normalize ideologies and themes and agendas that completely go against everything. It's fascinating. But I'm glad that we kind of understand the whole origin of like some of these certain symbols. But like I was saying, this whole idea of using racism as like a propaganda tool, like it just seems more and more the case. Um, and that's why I kind of want to cover, more of these ideas, and there's some interesting things when you kind of realize the some of the strategies that, whether it's the Nazi ideology, Nazi used, or even now, like it's fascinating. Um, it just really is. And this story here is really interesting, because it just coincides with this whole idea of everyone kind of saying there's, with these new age movements of considering themselves, superior to other people because, they identify with a different gender and several different sexual preferences, and they also just happen to be biracial, so that makes them superior to other people. You're seeing that going on even in Hollywood, in the hiring practices in corporate. It's everywhere. This it's fascinating. All right, so this article was written in August 13th, 2019 by Ashley Cowie. Identity of a thousand-year-old warrior corrupted by Nazi and Soviet spin doctors. Facts are finally dislodging almost 100 years of lies and misinterpretations pertaining to a mysterious thousand-year-old warrior skeleton unearthed in Paraguay Castle and Czechoslovakia. The remains of the man were discovered in the 1920s with unusual weapons and tools, and was then used as political tool by both the Nazis and Russians to assert their mythical ancestral lineages. But a new paper has established his actual origins. And you have that going on right now with many of these TV shows, and rewriting history and including, black people in time periods and eras where they weren't there at that time. So it's all right there. you know they're practicing the same playbook. The new study was published this week in the journal Antiquity, and lead author Professor Nicholas Saunders from University of Bristol in the UK tells the almost incredible story of the warrior skeleton that was unearthed in July 1928 by Ivan Bruskovsky and Ukrainian archaeologist who is regarded as one of the founding figures of Czech medieval technology. I mean, archaeology. Where did I get technology from? So here we have picture A is Ivan, the discovery of the excavator on the Viking warrior skeleton burial at Paraguay Castle in 1928, and B is Carl Guth, head of the Historical Archaeology Department of the National Museum of Paraguay, and in charge of the Paraguay Castle excavations. Having fought for both the Austro-Hungarians and Russians, Brokowski arrived in Czechoslovakia in 1920, and in an interview with IFL Science, Dr. Sanders said questions over Brokowski's Czech citizenship meant he never published a study of his discovery of the warrior. But today's archaeologists are much clearer about the warrior skeleton's identity and origins. And here we have a photograph of the warrior skeleton and his grave shortly after excavation in 1928. The sword tells archaeologists that the man lived between 1800 and 1000 AD, but this weapon was different from almost 1500 other earlier medieval graves found in Paraguay Castle. He was also found buried with diverse objects, but not necessarily from the local area, according to the paper. So here we have a picture of the warrior skeleton. The grave included a sword, a bucket, fire steel flint, a razor knives, and an axe. The warrior's identity was claimed as Nordic by the Nazis to support their delusions that the entirety of Central Europe was of Norse origin. It was also picked up by both the Soviets and the Chechens to align with their political agendas. In an interview with IFL Science, Dr. Sanders said, he, the warrior, was caught up in the maelstrom of the 20th century wars and the shifting political ideologies that went with them. And he states that the dead warrior was weaponized politically. I mean, we have that going on constantly nowadays, with whether it's Black Lives Matter or LGBTQ movements or Antifa, environmental movements. They will use, dead people as a rallying cry to further promote their ideologies and to further commit acts of violence or destruction or chaos. That is something that we know is very apparent. And we also know that, many of the times these groups are being funded either by outside oligarchs, or inside oligarchs, whether it's George Soros or even by our own federal government. We know that to be the case. You look at the case that took place in Michigan, where they were trying to kidnap the governor, and it turned out, what was it, like 21 out of the 22 of them were FBI informants. So, and even now you have it with social media, or I should say with movies, where they will take, known white characters of history and then turn them black, or race swap them, or even gender swap them. Or even and now there was a video that went viral that was claiming that there were black people in the UK during like the 13th century. And we know that's not the case. So even, the whole point here is that you look at these modern day cultural, movements, so to speak, and they're practicing and inhibiting the same type of themes and techniques that Nazi Germany did. And whether it's weaponizing the death of a person like George Floyd and how they weaponized his death and or whether it's Kyle Rittenhouse. You look at these scenarios, and then when you further investigate the situation, you end up realizing with George Floyd, like, he was not a very good person. And when you look into stuff about the police officer, you realize, oh, this man ran a drug cartel. So until you really look into some of these things, all you're getting is the propagandized version of these stories. And that's what's so dangerous about these new liberal groups, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Antifa. They practice, Marxist socialist ideologies, and at the exact same time they will exploit and harass and destroy the very same communities that they are advocating for, whether that's by design or they're just, idiots. I could say it goes hand in hand. How to weaponize a dead warrior's skeleton. Step 1. Choose a racist political agenda. Anyone, it doesn't matter. Step 2. Commit to murdering anyone misaligned with one's chosen racist political agenda. Step 3. Take over neighboring countries and select pieces of their archaeology to blatantly misinterpret and vow to shoot anyone who contradicts your bizarre claims and rewriting of mainstream history. Now, who does that sound like to anybody listening right now? Where are you seeing that right now? Huh? Where do you see that going on right now? They just they don't murder you in person now. They just cancel you online. So where do you see that being used right now? I'm sure many of you know. Hit that like button if you know. Leave a comment if you know. Like I said, they're the same tactics. And you don't have to use a warrior skeleton. It can be George Floyd. It could be what's going on in Philadelphia right now with the Latin boy. I mean, it's all right there in front of you. By 1939, the German army had occupied Czechoslovakia and Nazi intellectuals were rewriting history to suit their own needs. And in Nicholas Godric Clark's 1993 book, Occult Roots of Nazi Secret Aryan Cults and the Influence on Nazi Ideology, we learn how the influential occult and millionaire sects in the Habsburg Empire combined notions of popular nationalism with the advocacy of racism and proclaimed need for German world rule. Where do you see that being institutionalized right now? Very similar ideology. It's what's it called? The New Liberal World Order, I believe they called it. Professor Saunders' paper discusses Nazi ideology that he maintains is built on a pseudo scientific occult archaeological Nordic supremacy argument aimed at supporting their ideas that the greater part of Central Europe was German Nordic Viking in origin. When the Nazis came across the warrior skeleton remains in 1939, it quickly became an ancient Nordic Viking, and having found one of their own, it was used in justifying their occupation of the country Czechoslovakia. According to the paper, what's more, the Nazis also applied the skeleton in their claim that Paraguay Castle was not Slavic origin, but it had been built by ancient Aryan Germanic people. Is anyone looking? Let's have quick origins change. It's no different than what they did recently with the Cleopatra film, where they blatantly made her black when we know that's not the case. uh, and then in that film, they the docu movie, whatever you want to call it, they implied and made it as if and discussed as if she was black, even though we historically know she wasn't. Is anyone looking? Let's have a quick origins change. I mean, we can have a quick origins change. Look what's going on right now with Ukraine and the Nazis in Ukraine, and how you now have was it Blinken like rewriting history. You had Nan Yahoo, an old video of Nan Yahoo saying that it wasn't Hitler that was killing the Jews, it was the Muslims. It's like what? Right now. Oh my god. Oh, don't forget what happened in Canada. Canada, literally the entire Parliament of Canada, which who should resign? The entire Parliament should resign. Celebrated a known Nazi who killed countless innocent Poles and Jews, a known war criminal, all because he fought the Russians. Okay, they're literally gonna get to a point. I'm telling you right now. Do not be surprised if the United States try to make the claim that the Russians caused the Holocaust. Okay, that's where they're going right now. All right, this is no different than the way Antifa and Black Lives Matter and the alphabet community, they do the exact same thing. It's all right there. Knowing what we know about the Nazis and their ruthless tactics in dealing with anyone deemed to be against their cause, like that sentence right there. Knowing what we know about the Black Lives Matter and their ruthless tactics in dealing with anyone deemed to be against their cause, knowing what we know about the Antifa and their ruthless tactics in dealing with anyone deemed to be against their cause, knowing what we know about the LGBTQ and their ruthless tactics with dealing with anyone deemed against their cause. Do you see what I'm saying here? I hope you guys are catching on to it. You would think that the last thing anyone in their right mind would do would be write a book about the oldest Slavic poetry in Central Europe, but this is precisely what Brovsky did. He successfully infuriated the Nazis, whose agenda aimed at proving a Nordic based history. An article on Cambridge.org titled Zeitist Archaeology, Conflict, Identity, and Ideology at Paraguay Castle, 1918 to 2018, explains that to avoid being co-signed to a concentration camp, Blavatsky's book was published with heavily slanted with pro-Nazi subplots. Oh, like Bridgerton or Cleopatra or Vikings Valhalla. Name your pick, guys. Pick. Name your pick. Name your pick. Leave a comment if you can think of a movie where they completely like just gender swap, race swap, a historical known figure. We even know what the figure looks like. Leave a comment if you can think of a film. All right, here we have moving the a picture of moving the burial block of the grave of the warrior skeleton to Paraguay Castle storerooms in 1928. After the 1945 collapse of the Nazis, Czechoslovakia was then occupied by the Soviets, and according to the new paper, Rokovsky's action as an anti-communist before the war led to the threat of imprisonment in a gulag unless the mysterious skeleton was portrayed in line with the Soviet idea of history. Without much of a choice, Rokovsky presented the warrior as a Western Slavic nobleman of the Slide dynasty. Warrior arrives in the nick of time. After retelling the highs and lows of Brokovsky's archaeological works, the paper asks whether the old debate of whether this man was Germanic or Slavic is simply a symptom of 20th century ideologies. In reality, argue the authors, The identity of people in the Middle Ages did not adhere to the naturalistic categories that we applied when we debate when the debate was raging in the 1940s. Exactly. It suggested that the man may have thought of himself as red-blooded Viking warrior, which is indicated by some of the grave goods, but he might have actually been a Slavic warrior and maybe a leader who lived a wildly traveled, adventurous, and belligerent existence before being laid to rest beneath what was to become Paraguay Castle, the study concludes. The skeleton of this early European leader is a potent example of identity politics where ideologies force multiple misinterpretations to match whichever political upheaval was unfolding. What is somewhat ironic is that the sleeping warrior resurfaced after 900 years, just in time to be embroiled in a Russian civil war, the Czechoslovakia independence, World War II, and the German occupants of Europe, not to mention the Cold War and the Slavic occupation and the Velvet Revolution. But I want to repeat this. The skeleton of this earlier European leader is a poignant example of identity politics, where ideologies forced multiple misinterpretations to match whichever political upheaval was unfolding. Where do you see that going on right now? Whether it's the federal government, whether it's these corporations and the various movies that they're making and whatever, you see it right there. They're practicing Nazi propagandic techniques. I mean, we should, spoiler alert, Operation Paperclip, but whatever, whatever. What was it that Lindsey Graham said when funding the Nazis? Best money ever spent. What was it that Israeli human rights group wrote to the Israeli government? Hey, can you please stop funding the Nazis in Ukraine? And then recently you saw a photo. There, I saw a photo of a bunch of LGBT. It was a bunch of trans activists, and they had a trans flag with Karl Marx in it. And I'm over here thinking to myself, like, do you guys not realize? Oh my gosh. Uh, it, it's so funny to me. It's too funny. This shit is just too funny. It's it's just too funny. Hold on, I just want to make sure I'm on the right track. Okay, yeah. All right. So let's continue. Let's learn about some racism. What is racism? Let's learn about that. So this is a very interesting little story, but I think it also kind of ties into a lot of these Western cultural movements that you're seeing going on right now. So we already kind of addressed that the the corporations and whatnot, they're kind of practicing Nazi propagandic techniques. But we are, we're aware of that because of Operation Paperclip. And if you think we only just stole their Nazi scientists and they only went to NASA, you're foolish. And I don't mean that disrespectful. All right, so this is written and it was updated January 29th, 2021. Was Heinrich Halmer's Nazi witch library discovered in a Czech library. In 2016, along with a vast array of international publications, the Daily Mail picked up a story that had been published in a Norwegian based paper prior to a conference about the confiscation of literature by the Nazis during World War II. The article reported that a massive collection of 13,000 books related to witchcraft and occult had been discovered in a depot belonging to the National Library of Czech Republic in Paraguay. The premise was that the Paraguay Library witchcraft collection had been compiled at the behest of Heinrich himself, an SS Nazi chief and one of the main architects of the Holocaust, and it had been all but forgotten since the 1950s. Now, I guarantee you, if the Ukraine war continues on for however long, I guarantee you within a year or two, uh, it's not going to be the Germans that were the architects of the Holocaust. It's going to be the Russians. I'm telling you, it's happening. It's going to come. It is going to come. You're going to see that. And here we have a picture, and it below it reports it says reports in the press claim that the SS Nazi chief Heinrich Himmler ordered the confiscation of 6,000 books from the Norwegian Order of Freemasons as part of his research into witch hunts. The articles claim that these had been found recently in the Paraguay Library connection. We have a photo of Heinrich and his seal. Yeah, I mean, like, and part of the reason why I want to pull this up is because, when you look into some of these Antifa people, many of these people, they're practicing witchcraft. They're into the occult. They're into Satanism. That's the crazy thing about it. Recently, and I'll be covering it in a separate story. If you are or were a Star Wars fan, and if you are or were or did watch Ahsoka, then you know of Dave Filoni, and you probably aren't aware, but Dave Filoni's wife is a Satanist and a known practice of witchcraft and alchemy, I believe. Which I have nothing against either of those two, but I do have an issue with Satanism. Not necessarily Luciferians, because I know there's a difference between the Luciferians and the Malachians, and I'm not going to try to get into all of that. But I'm a little concerned with this whole this fashion, this weirdness of like feminist, like Satanism, witchcraft that's kind of like going on and being like created. I have encountered several feminists who also practice witchcraft, so there is something there to be said. And even with these groups, don't be surprised if some of them in those groups are practicing witchcraft. I'm telling you, do not be surprised. Theories about Heinrich Himmler and his special Nazi SS witchcraft unit. The Daily Mail article connected the discovery of the rare witchcraft books at the Czech National Library with the creation of Halmar of a special unit called S. Sonderkommando in 1935, so named for the first letter of the German word Hex, meaning witch. Apparently, this unit was part of a systemic search for the Nazis for texts connected with magical witch hunt trials, subjects which came to obsess Heimer, who believed the Hocus Pocus books held the key to Aryan supremacy in the world, according to the Daily Mail. The local claim that the SS troops combed over 260 libraries and archives for information. And we also know this before that in terms of the Freemasons and all of that, who practices that right now? If you're privy, if you're aware of that stuff, who do you think is making those moves right now? Accumulating the largest collection of books on witches and their persecution in medieval Germany, which was dubbed the Witch Library, quoting a Norwegian Masonic researcher, The article claimed that about 6,000 of 13,000 books were seized from the Norwegian Order of Freemasons in Oslo. So here we have a picture of a house. It was a 1627 engraving of the Malfius Bamberg, Germany, where suspected witches were held and interrogated. Quack theories on race from the mind of Heinrich Hilmer. While the media jumped at the story of witchcraft collection discovered at Paraguay Library, were the reports actually true? Marcelia Strulova, the National Library of Czech Republic, described the articles as not only exaggeration but nonsense. Meanwhile, Peter Sartami, author of the book Between Occultism and Nazism, describes them as overblown and misguided in an interview published in Vice. There are, however, some kernels of truth to be found. Alongside Hermann Rith and Richard Walter Dare, Heinrich Helmer founded the Anheimer Institute in 1935 to research the archaeological and historic roots of the Aryan race. The research was used to justify their policies and distorted anti Semitic racial take on history. Apart from gathering texts, so they conducted experiments and expeditions to prove that they were the ancestors of the Nordic population which had once ruled the world. Some scholars have claimed that Heinrich Hilmer was the follower of the witch cult hypothesis created by Margaret Mary, and he believed that the power of the old occult masters and Christian Celtic Germanic nature religion would help the Nazi rule the world. Halmer claimed that Catholic Church Inquisition had purposely attempted to repress an indigenous German pagan nature-based religion known as Wutkusch in a conspiracy against the Aryan race. According to biographers in Hilmer, he even claimed that one of his own ancestors had been burned as a witch. Now here we have an illustration that shows Witches Sabbath by Francesco de Goya. And you have a bunch of witches around a goat. So we got some Baphomet going on there. But what's interesting about this is that if you look at like the Antifa groups, you'll see these type of symbolisms. You'll see like the anarchy symbol. You'll see like those symbols within these groups. So they're just one and the same. Heinrich Hilmer and esoteric Hitlerism. According to Georgic Luck, the cult which Helmer followed had its roots in late antiquity. In his book, Arcana Mundi, Magic and the Occult in the Greek and Roman Worlds, Luck described the basis of the belief which some have claimed became an important part of the political life of Nazis. The cult worshipped the horned god of Celts and the Greco-Roman pan Faunus. It was a combination of gods which gave roots to the new deity, an early conception of the devil. Heinrich Hilmer is credited as a founder of esoteric Hitlerism. He has also been described as being deeply involved in astrology and attempting to construct a new pseudo-Germanic neo-pagan religion based on a cult created in his imagination. He approved official pagan holidays and manipulated facts connected with traditional pagan cults. Legends related to the Nazi fascination with the occult abound. Such scholars claim that all of the Nazis, including the Führer, attended ceremonies of the new cult. Many of them are thought to have taken place in Huesca capital, located 29.2 miles north of Paraguay. Built in the 13th century, the castle still contains a Gothic chapel, a green chamber with late Gothic paintings, and a knight's drawing room. According to local folklore, Huska Castle also contains a gateway to hell. Here we have a picture of an American soldier in April 1945 stands amongst the cultural property looted by the Nazis and stored at Skaldrik Ellingen. Fake news. How did the rumor begin? Heather Green from the Witch Hunt claims that modern historians have largely debunked most of these theories, but they remain in our collective cultural imagination, thanks in part to popular culture such as Indiana Jones films and Dan Brown novels. The Third Reich and its leaders have become, ideologically speaking, the Western world's symbol of ultimate evil. They have also been aligned with other cultural archetypes of evil, including witchcraft. She explains. The real story about the Paraguay Library books is related to the Books Discovered Once Again project, sponsored by the European Economic Area, Norway Grants, Stifelsen Arkvet, and the National Library of the Czech Republic in Paraguay. Peru. The virtual exhibition of the project explains that the Nazis made use of censorship, seizure, and propaganda banning all forms of expression that questioned Nazism. Where do you see that happening right now, ladies and gents? This included Jewish or Freemason writings. In his interview with Rice, Peter Startermeyer explains the reason the Nazis collected this stuff was not because the Nazis believed in it, it's more because a branch of the Nazis thought that these groups presented a possible danger to Nazism. Mm. Where do you see that going on right now? You know, we don't want the money to stop. We don't want the money to stop flowing to Ukraine if the whole country realizes that their tax dollar is going to funding Nazis. But I digress. According to Marcela Strulova, the Czech National Library, who is interviewed in The Wild Hunt, the Books Discovered Once Again project is tasked with the complex process of identifying the ownership of the many confiscated books which were discovered in the Czech Republic after the end of Nazi occupation, as well as creating a digital catalog for the general public. These included more than 12,000 books taken from the Masonic lounges around Europe. And I would love to visit that. Shuhova highlighted that the collection does not include anything related either to witchcraft or the occult, arguing that the rumor began due to a misunderstanding of the academic presentations during the Norway conference in 2016. In Novinky, Struhova claims that the media reports are tantamount to science fiction. This collection has nothing to do with Halmer's occult library. So, you know, there you have the media falsifying historical evidence and stories to push certain political agendas and ideologies. Uh, where do you see that happening right now? It's happening right now. You know, that's kind of the whole point where I'm trying to get at here is like it's you literally see this stuff happening right now, and you see these groups that I've been talking about, whether it's LGBTQ, the uh, no, we haven't got there yet. So, okay, so you just see how these groups are using the same tactics and propaganda, no different than the government. And I'm not going to get into certain conspiracies on that part, but like I said, if you think Operation Paperclip was the Only extent of it, I would say, look around you right now. All right. So, let's learn a little bit about Aryan. What's all the hype around this word? So now we're going to get into some interesting stuff in regards to the origins of this word and civilizations that have been connected to this word. So this article was updated May 16th, 2018 by Alicia McDermott. Arcane, Aryans, Advanced Astronomy, and Untold Secrets of a Russian Citadel. Arcane is a mysterious site located in Russia. Experts believe the citadel, not necessarily the oldest feature of the site, was built between the 17th and 16th century BC. But there are several reasons why Arcane stands apart from the Bronze Age settlements in the area, leading to the idea it was built by a separate group. There is controversy on exactly who the builders were and what they made the site for, and that uncertainty has led to some fascinating if unorthodox claims. Much love to everyone in the live stream. Please hit that like button if you are enjoying the show so far. Here we have an illustration of the reconstruction of the citadel of Arkham, Russia. The inhabitants of Arkham. Although it is unknown who built Arkham, archaeological evidence have found the site to suggest it was inhabited by people of the Aryan race. Specifically, it has been suggested that Arkham's residents once consisted of members of the Sintashta culture, Indo-Iranian people of ancient Eurasian steppe. I'm going to repeat that. Specifically, it has been suggested that Arkham's residents once consisted of members of the Sintashta culture, Indo-Iranian people of ancient Eurasian steppe. Okay, Indo-Iranian. All right, it's the Middle East. The principal evidence for Aryans having lived at Arkham is the discovery of horse burials following their style. The practice is described in ancient Indian texts and says that horses were buried with their masters. Being nomads, many Indo European peoples had a strong connection to their horses, and it's not surprising for them to think that the deep connection would continue into the afterlife. Evidence of ritual horse sacrifices has been found in stone necropolises unearthed in the Arkham Valley. Here we have a picture and an illustration of Aryans sacrificed their horses and were buried together. So when the masters died, the horses were sacrificed and buried with them. In the drawing, it seems like the horses were buried on top of their master. Their master, it seems like he was buried inside a box. Apart from its creators, another mystery is why the site was suddenly abandoned. There is some evidence of a fire, however, that may not have been the cause of desertion. Because the site was fortified, some people believe it was abandoned when the inhabitants lost a war. Skeletons have been found at Arkham and in the expansive necropolises of the valley, but the human remains do not generally suggest death in battle. And here we have a photograph of an archaeologist at a burial found in Arkham Valley in August 2017. A particularly interesting find of human remains was made at Arkham in 2013. An individual with, no way, an elongated skull? What? No way. Oh, wow, this took a turn. The person may have belonged to the Sarmati tribe. Researchers believe that the alteration was intentional. It was, after all, a common practice among some groups who lived in the South Ural. It is also found worldwide. Nonetheless, the reasons behind this ritual deformation are unknown, leading some to see stronger ties between the curious site of Arcane and extraterrestrials. If you're more interested in learning about that, I have done multiple live streams. I did one on elongated skulls way back, maybe a year ago. Also, check out my two videos on mainstream academia and the lost race of giants. I cover a little bit of there as well. And here we have a reconstruction of the head of the Sarmati woman with an elongated skull. To date, archaeologists have found no jewelry art, or obvious treasures at Arcane. Broken ceramics, bones, and teeth of domestic and wild animals and humans, and a few stone and bronze tools make up the range of artifacts. Thus, Arcane holds a different value for archaeologists, the ruins and the curious nature of their layout. So here we have a photo of Arcane's artifacts. Consists of broken ceramics, stone and bronze tools, bones, and teeth. Architecture and the layout of Arcane. As with the mystery of its builders, there is also much confusion in Arcane's original purpose. Legend suggests it was a holy city for rituals and ceremonies. However, it is evident that over time the location was also used as a fort. As with many ancient sites, it is likely that Arcane served more than one need, and the main purpose probably changed over time. This is supported by the archaeological findings, which suggest that it was used over the course of a millennia. Today, Arcane is sometimes called the Land of Towns, due to its central location in relation to other nearby prehistoric sites and monuments. And here we have an aerial view of the excavating a necropolis near Arcane in 2015. Arcane has a complicated and prearranged plan. It is obvious that the society which built it was organized with a social structure and authority figures. Its ruins show thick walls built in concentric circles. These circles were built around a main square, probably a ceremonial space, which contained about 60 dwellings. Each house had a hearth, well, cellar, and an oven which was used to fire property and smelt bronze. Although there is evidence of fire damaging Arcane, the ruins show a fireproof substance was also included in the construction of some of the structures. I wonder what that substance was. And here we have reconstruction of a prehistoric house in Arcane. Arcane streets were made of wood and had ditches below, each collected any runoff and sewage and drained it from the town. The defensive walls were made of clay and abode blocks of a wooden frame. Enemies would have a difficult time reaching the center. Some researchers liken Arcane's layout to a swastika and or a mandala. The large circles surrounding the internal square bring the image of a mandala to mind. A square inside a circle is a sacred symbol for Hindu and Buddhist beliefs. The center of a mandala and of arcane is generally seen as the most important space, the location to focus thoughts or in arcane's case to hold rituals. Did the original builders understand the nature of the universe in that way and build their city to reflect that knowledge? Hmm. Now, I just want to remind everyone that the Aryans originate from the Middle East, India, Iran. I just want to remind everyone. Arcane's astronomical observations. Here we have a aerial view of Arcane. Perhaps consider that Arcane is often compared to Stonehenge due to similarities in the site's latitude date. Although Arcane is somewhat older, size and use as an astronomical observation and calendar. And if you are apprehensive about me saying that, go watch my two-part series on the dynastic race. Yet it seems Arcane's inhabitants had an even more sophisticated knowledge of astronomy than Stonehenge builders. Experts believe the spherical shaped buildings were made in association with sun worship at the site or perhaps as a representation of the universe, maybe furthering the mandala purpose. And here we have aerial views of a comparison to Stonehenge and Arcane. And Arcane, yeah, is compared to Stonehenge is way more intricate and detailed. Whoa. Doors were placed in alignment with the rise and set of the sun and the moon so that the original builders could observe at least 18 astronomical events, making Arcane both more ancient and accurate than Stonehenge. The preciseness of Arcane's spiral buildings strongly suggests their use as astronomical uh, observatories, and calendars. And keep in mind that Stonehenge was rebuilt, that they messed with it for whatever reason. So we have a actual reconstruction of the Arcane Citadel. Russian archaeologist K.K. Bystruskin, who made the comparison between the two famous sites in 2003, said Stonehenge offers an observational accuracy of 10 arc minutes to a degree, but Arcane surpasses it with an accuracy of 1 arc minute. Quote, Stonehenge allowed for and possibly may still allow for observations of 10 astronomical phenomena using 22 elements, whereas some astronomers claim that Arcane allows for observations of 18 phenomena using 30 elements. This essentially means that certain events in the sky could be observed and tracked by using the site in particular ways and from different positions, and that Arcane offered more observational events than Stonehenge. Uh, End quote. Note that the buildings at Arcane also predate similar formations used by ancient Egyptians and Greeks, suggesting an earlier in-depth understanding of the Earth in relation to the rest of the universe. Now, to give you guys a little insight, the Indo-Aryans, they're descendants from the sons of Noah. So, like I said, if you really want to understand that, after this, go check out my two-part dynastic race series. Unexplained Arcane. The amazing knowledge of astronomy which is evident in its ruins, as well as the mystery behind its builders and abandonment, have led several scholars to say an advanced civilization once lived at Arcane. There is even speculation that the forgotten ancient people may have had spacecrafts. A popular legend claims a god landed in Arkham, and some people have suggested that the center served as a launch pad for spaceships and rockets. But this is unlikely unless the pilots of the crafts had an unknown propulsion system which would not damage the buildings or people of nearby. Obviously, Arkham had a very sophisticated prehistoric culture, but was it a center for a civilization which had advanced technology? That is a difficult question, but it is still regarded as a sacred site for many people. Here we have a drawing of people walking around ritual spirals of stones made by Rodnovers in the areas around Arkham. It has also been called a hot spot for paranormal phenomenon. Reports of UFOs in the form of light flashes, moving circles, or fog circles are prevalent. Visitors have claimed to hear strange voices, become disoriented, or see ghosts. Magnetic anomalies have also been noted. No known scientific investigations have been made looking into the claims that there is a lack of proof for these strange events, but they continue to draw in visitors and interests. So the whole concept, as we're learning more and more, this whole concept of the Aryan race, we're learning more and more that this doesn't seem to be what the Nazis claimed, what these white supremacist groups claim, what what Black Lives Matters and all those groups claim. Uh, we're starting to learn that is not the case. But let's continue on to dismantling the origin and ideas of these racist nonsense, because as we're learning, we're learning that it's all propaganda. Even the origins of the word of race was created by one of the founding fathers. Look into that. Thomas Jefferson, I believe. Oh, okay. We already covered that. So we're good. We're good. We are on track. All right, here we go. The real Aryans, putting Nazi superstitions about Aryan race to rest. To quickly put any Nazi superstitions to rest, the earliest known Aryans lived in prehistoric Iran. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that for everyone in the back who didn't hear that. To quickly put any Nazi superstitions to rest, the earliest known Aryans lived in prehistoric Iran. I'm going to say it one more time. To quickly put any Nazi superstitions to rest, the earliest known Aryans lived in prehistoric Iran. These people migrated to northern India sometime around 1500 BC. Previous inhabitants of the Indian subcontinent called these newcomers Arya. The English term Aryan comes from this Sanskrit word. Interestingly, the term has a cognate in the Persian language Iran or Iran. This word is the source of the name of the modern day country known as Iran. Oh, yeah, Iran. Okay, yeah. Um, Prior to the arrival of the Aryans, the Indus Valley civilization had already achieved a high level of development. Research indicates that the social conditions of the Indus Valley civilization were comparable to those of Sumeria, and some aspects superior to the Babylonians and Egyptians of the era. By 5500 BC, the world witnessed the emergence of religions, followed by the farming communities around 4000 BC, and the development of urban living around 2500 BC. The peak of this ancient civilization was reached around 2000 BC. The Hindu Kush Mountains served as a gateway for nomadic cattle herds from Central Asia to settle in the lush Indus Valley from about 1500 BC. These nomads, of course, the Aryans, contrary to popular myth, the Aryans were not unstoppable invaders, but rather a group that gradually migrated to the region. There is limited evidence to support the notion that the Aryans were proto Mongols who conquered the Indian subcontinent and caused the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization as a result. Here we have um, models of the diorama of everyday life in the Indus Valley civilization. So these people here, these dark skinned people, these are the Aryans. Just so everyone's clear, these are the true Aryans. Oh man, propaganda is one hell of a drug. In reality, the Indus Valley civilization may have declined due to various factors, including environmental changes and social factors. It appears that the Aryans filled the void left by the decline of the Indus Valley civilization over time, rather than invading or taking over the region by force. Archaeological findings indicate that the societies in the Indus Valley region were already in decline by 1800 BC, possibly due to changes in river patterns. The exact cause of this decline is a subject of debate, with more researchers proposing that the drying up of the Sarawati River was the culprit, while others suggest that it was due to the catastrophic flooding. However, students of environmental science will recognize that these theories are not mutually exclusive, and both factors may have played a role in the decline of the civilization. And the Saraswati River is also mentioned a lot of with the Denisovan people. The agricultural practices that allowed the Indus people to thrive were disrupted by natural disasters, such as floods and droughts, as well as innovations. As a result, the economies and society orders that were based on those practices crumbled. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization is supported by various pieces of evidence, such as the disappearance of writing, the abandonment of some cities, and the interpretation of trade connections with the Near East. Shortly after this decline, the Aryans arrived in the region, and their language, agricultural techniques, and animal husbandry practices began to take root and prosper. And here we have a picture of the English term Aryan, comes from the Sanskrit word Arya, represents the representative image of Sanskrit manuscript. So before we move any forward, let's delve into a little bit about the Indus Valley. All right, this article was written December 6th, 2014 by uh, Liz Leaf Floor. Interesting. The Indus Valley Civilization, an ornamented past revealed in 5,000-year-old artifacts and jewelry. The Indus Valley Civilization was rich with culture and tradition, revealed in its wealth of beautiful, intricate, and elaborate ornaments, jewelry, and artifacts. These items are on exhibit at India's Jewelry Gallery at the National Museum in Delhi. Remember, the Aryans are from Iran, India, okay? I just want to keep reminding people. And to anyone who's new, who just joined in. According to DNA India, the display represents the high aesthetic sense of the craftsmen of old world civilization and the connection between culture then and now through art, jewelry, coins, and pottery. The National Museum exhibits is entitled Alkara, the Beauty of Ornament. The museum describes the nature of the collection and the influence of adornment on humanity. Observing the once decorated with beautiful ornaments, the body assumes form, becoming visible, attractive, and perfect. Painstakingly wrought by anonymous goldsmiths in ateliers and workshops across the country, the National Museum collection celebrates the great variety of forms and beauty of Indian design and the genius of Indian craftsmanship. And here we have royal earrings from India, 1st century BCE. That is incredible. Those are earrings. And look at the lion. Look at how did they do the lion? How did they do that? How did they do that? There were no like microscopes or those fancy eyewear things that jewelers wear. How do they do that? Look at that. More than 200 ornaments are on display, collected from 3300 BC to the 19th century and 20th centuries, including a 5,000 jade, circa 2600 to 1900 BCE. That's beautiful. Guest curator and jewelry historian Usha Balakrishnan told DNA India, India was the largest manufacturer and exporter of beads to the world at that time. They had the skill of tumbling beads and cutting semi-precious headstones of shaping the beads. India was also home to the diamond can be found on other items featured in the exhibit at the museum. Two square amulets feature lucky swastika symbolisms, and Balkarshna says they are the earliest known representations of swastika in gold known to us. Other motifs decorating the artifacts are lions, fish, and the Purnagat, known as a vase of plenty in religious ceremonies. The Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan era, was one of the earliest known cultures of the Old World, dating from approximately 3,300 to 1,900 BCE and spanning wide its height. Wikipedia notes that the engineering skills of the people were remarkable, with great achievements in measurement accuracy and craftsmanship. The subcontinent boasts the longest history of jewelry making in the world, stemming back 5,000 years. These first jewelers created gold earrings, necklaces, beads, bangles, and wear have an ancient Indus Valley weight scale. Sir John Marshall of they seemed to completely upset all established ideas about early art and culture. Modeling such as this was unknown in the ancient world up to the Hellenistic age of Greece, and I thought, therefore, that some mistake must have surely been made. Here we have a replica of the prehistoric dancing girl of Mohenjo Daro, circa 2500 BC. This is what's really interesting. If you add on to your watch list my live stream on ancient Hindu texts and quantum physics, you'll understand that the Indus Valley people that time period, they were very, very advanced. No different than the Denisovans, who were the equivalent of upright apes, and they made incredible jewelry. So we really don't understand cultures of our history were more advanced and predated. It's very similar to the whole idea that it was a German mathematician that created calculus when it was actually created by an Indian man named Brahmana. So just Valley civilization and their descendants is hoped to help fill in some of the gaps in understanding of the history and rich culture of ancient India. So again, the Aryan people, their origins are traced back to India. It has nothing to do with Nordics. It has nothing to do with any of that nonsense. Just to further make sure that everyone understands where I'm coming from. And while I pull up, the article, please, if you're new to the channel, if you've been enjoying the content, please make sure to hit that like button. I see you over there, Rumble. Don't hold out on me. Hit that like button. All right, let's continue. Uncovering the origins and evolution of the kingdom of Aryan. There is a distinct lack to evidence which sheds light on the true history of the kingdom of Aryan. The recent sources that reference the Aryans only do so in passing. Their accuracy cannot be ascertained. For instance, the Greek historian Herodotus describes the people of Media as having once been called Aryans. Uh, the Medes were called anciently by all people Aryans. But when Mede, the Colchian, came to them from Athens, they changed their name. Such is the account which they themselves give, he wrote. However, scholars are divided on the credibility of this account. Some believe that Herodotus was merely recording the popular legend, while others maintain that the story may have some historical basis. Despite these uncertainties, the study of ancient texts and archaeological findings provides some insights into the origins and evolution of Aryan civilization. The lack of archival evidence related to the Aryans is not very helpful when it comes to understanding the character of Aryan people. An equally sketchy account of ancient Aryan legitimacy is the Zoroastrian religion. The term Aryana I apologize if I butchered that, which translates as Aryan expanse, refers to the mythical homeland of the Iranian people, and it's supposed to be the center of the world. This engenders the term with certain amount of respectability, but still does not really give any racial hierarchical meaning to it. Otherwise, Persian kings like Darius the Great or Xerxes were historically described as Aryans or Aryan stock. This most likely refers to the original Aryans coming from Central Asia, possibly due to Zoroastrian influences of Vedic religions. The terms Arya and Arya are used in a moral sense as to distinguish proper behavior from improper behavior. An Aryan thus was one who lived according to his or her dharma, although it is not clear if this word derives from a tribal name. This provides clues as to how the disintegration could have begun to take on a take on connotations of nobility and superiority. Interesting. So, you know what? We're gonna dive into this Zoroastrian religion so we can fully understand all of this. All right. This was written November 14th, 2021 by Bipin Demri. Uh, Zoroastrianism, 4,000 years of faith, fire, and the battle between good and evil. The origins of Zoroastrianism can be traced back to nearly 4,000 years ago. It was the first monotheistic faith in the world and even Persians' official religion from 6000 BC to 650 AD, and it still exists. However, while it was powerful religion in the distant past, now Zoroastrianism is one of the smallest religions in the world. There are between 100,000 to 200,000 modern followers worldwide. Zoroaster, the founder of Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster, uh, a mysterious prophet figure, founded Zoroastrianism in ancient Iran. While the precise date of the religion's foundation is not known, it is believed to have been established between 1200 and 1500 BC, as per the archaeological evidence. Zoroaster was born in southwest Afghanistan or northeast Iran. He was born to a family that followed a polytheistic religion, which included the ritual use of different intoxicants and animal sacrifice. Very little information is available about the birth and early life of the prophet Zoroaster. Most of what is known about Zoroaster comes from the Gathas, which is an ancient hymn collection composed by Zarathustra. So here we have a illustration of the life of Zoroaster, the founder of Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster rejected the Bronze Age Iranian religion that included worshipping many gods. He was also against the hallucinogenic homa plant used for rituals and opposed sacrificing animals. The early Zoroastrian texts reveal that the prophet used to receive answers through his prayers. Later writings state that he even ascended to heaven to speak with God directly. As per Zoroastrian tradition, Zoroaster had a divine vision when he was 30 years old. In the vision, he saw his Amshaspantas, seven divine entities, and God while performing a ritual purification rite. The single vision changed his worldview. He went on to tell others about it. He started believing that there was only one God, the Creator. He also taught that one God called Ahura Mazda was worthy of worship. Some of the deities, such as the devas of the old religion, seemed to delight in strife and war. According to the prophet Zoroaster, they were evil spirits who worked for Angra Mainyu, the adversary of God. Zoroastrian religious beliefs. The core belief system of Zoroastrianism is that Ahura Mazda is the supreme being of light and goodness, and Agra Mainyu is the spirit of evil and darkness. Ahura Mazda means wise lord. Hiram, who is the equivalent of the devil, is believed to be the embodiment of Agra Mainyu. According to this religion, Everything that happens is driven by the dual forces of dark and light. Zoroastrians believe the concept of free will. All human beings are free to make a choice whether they want to follow the path of light or darkness. The followers of this religion believe that ethical and active participation in life through good thoughts, good deeds, and good words is essential to keep chaos away and ensuring happiness in life. The religion teaches us that Ahura Mazda is the creator of the whole universe and is compassionate by nature. He is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. He is unchanging and the source of all happiness and goodness. He is capable of conceiving things that are impossible for humans. Zoroastrians also believe that everything that the wise Lord has created is pure and must be treated with respect and love. At the age of 7, the followers are given a kusti cord and a sudre shirt as part of a ritual initiation ceremony. The garments are considered sacred. They tie the cord around the shirt 3 times to remind themselves of good words, good thoughts, and good deeds. They perform this ritual along with prayer several times a day. They emphasize action over belief. Zoroastrians genuinely give to charities and participate in social and educational initiatives. Fire and water are symbols of purity in the Zoroastrian religion. The followers of this religion worship the fire temples that contain an altar where flames burn 24 hours a day. Earth and air are also considered sacred elements for Zoroastrians. Traditionally, Zoroastrians placed their dead on top of special towers where the bodies were left to be eaten by birds. However, modern Zoroastrians bury their dead in a stone or concrete cave. That's very similar to the Mongols and how they would chop up their dead and allow the vultures to eat them. And here we have a picture of a printed tower of the printed drawing of the Towers of Silence, 2 circular ray structures used for Zoroastrians to dispose of the dead. And it has the dead people on top, and you can see the birds eating the dead people. Zoroastrian holidays. According to the traditional Zoroastrian calendar, each month consists of 30 days and 5 or 6 days are added to the end of the year. Zoroastrian holidays usually fall on the same day every year. One of the most widely celebrated holidays of Zoroastrians is Nowruz. It is their New Year festival that falls on the first day of spring. They spend a month preparing for this holiday. According to the followers of the religion, the concept of New Year is to start fresh. It involves cleaning both one's house and one's soul. However, if anyone has old quarrels, they need to settle them by this date. During this festival, every house is filled with sweets, fruits, and long stemmed white flowers. Gifts are exchanged for the new year. Nowruz is still embedded in Iranian culture and is now celebrated as Iranian New Year. And here we have a illustration depicting Hafsin symbols of Nowruz related to the elements of fire, earth, and air, and water, and the 3 life forms of humans, animals, and plants. Gohorda Sal is another significant festival Zoroastrians celebrate. It is Zoroaster's birthday and is celebrated 6 days after Nowruz. On this day, the followers of this religion gather in fire temples to feast and pray together. As you can see, along with one of the oldest religions, Zoroastrianism, is also an interesting religion to explore. Now you're seeing that this area is extremely fascinating in terms of the level of technology and culture And again, and this is why I wanted to cover this, because I wanted to dispel this whole idea of the Aryan race in terms of it relating to um Nazism and like the white race, and that that's not the truth. We're learning that right now as we're delving in through this. I mean, how ironic would it be, right, if you were to tell Hitler, hey bro, you got it wrong, it's actually in India. I mean, that's part of the reason why that they were in Tibet as well, because they were under the impression that the the origins of the Aryan race was in to Tibet, more specifically the kingdom of Shambhala, which is translated to another word for it. I cannot remember it. Shangri-La. So if you're more interested, like I said, if you're interested in that, after this live stream, check out my live stream on the Lost Kingdom of Shambhala and the Nazi connection. So let's keep on following through on Zoroastrianism, because I find this very, very interesting. Okay, this article is written December 6, 2019. Zoroastrian Towers of Silence, leaving the dead for the vultures. A tower of silence is also a tower of silence, also known as a dakma, is a type of structure used for funeral purposes by adherents of Zoroastrian faith. Zoroastrian practice for the disposal of the dead involves the exposure of the corpse to the sun and vultures. This funerary practice has been used traditionally by Zoroastrians, though it has become less common in recent times. As a result, there are a number of discord towers of silence, which no doubt have an air of mystery around them. Why did Zoroastrians choose this funerary practice? The exposure of dead bodies to scavenging animals is recorded by the 5th century Greek writer Herodotus to have been practiced by the Persians. Therefore, it would be reasonable to date that the Zoroastrian practice to this period, and quite possibly even further back in time. There is a rationale for this treatment of the dead. And here we have a picture of an old ancient tower of silence in Yazd, Iran. According to Zoroastrian belief, the four elements, fire, water, earth, and air, are sacred and ought not to be polluted by the disposal of the dead. Cremation, for example, is believed to cause pollution to fire, air, and at times river water as well, while burial without adequate lining of the grave causes pollution to the earth and ground water. Fascinating. Here we have the same drawing of the Towers of Silence. In order to avoid polluting these elements, you know, the vegans and the environmental groups, they could learn a thing or two from the Zoroastrians. In order to avoid polluting these elements, Zoroastrians resorted to other means of disposing their dead. The most notable of these is the exposure of the dead to scavenging animals, which is the idea behind the construction of the Towers of Silence. Incidentally, the English term of this structure has been attributed to Robert Murphy, a translator in the service of the British colonial government in India during the early 19th century. What happens at the towers? At present, it is not entirely clear when the earliest of these structures were built. Nevertheless, the towers of silence that are existent today may have the same or a similar construction to the ones used in the past. These towers were essentially raised platforms with three concentric circles within them. The bodies of men were arranged in the outer circle, those of women in the middle circle, and those of children in the inner circle. Here we have a illustration of the three-tiered tower of silence in which men were placed on the outside, women in the middle, and children in the inner circle. So they just toss children into the pit? God damn. The dead were left on the Tower of Silence, where their flesh will be eaten by vultures. Provided that the vultures are present in adequate numbers, the flesh may be completely stripped from the bones in less than half an hour. Wow. After the body was stripped of its flesh, the remaining bones will be left to be dried and bleached by the sun. The stripping of the flesh and the drying of the bones are regarded as a purification process, which, after the skeletal remains, may be collected and deposited in an ossuary, which may be located within or nearby the tower. Alternatively, the bones may be placed in a central where if the climate is dry, they would naturally disintegrate into powder. Oh, okay, so that's what that pit was for. Got it. The Towers of Silence can be found in Iran and India, where Parsi communities exist. In Iran, Towers of Silence were in use until these funerary practices were banned by the government during the 1970s. In a report from 2015, it was written that India has a Parsi population around 61,000. Of these, 41,000 live in Mumbai. Hence, it is in this city that several towers of silence may be found. Here we have a picture of a Zoroastrian tower of silence on a hill in Yazd, Iran. Unlike in Iran, the problem faced by the Parsi people of India is that the depopulation of vultures. The decline in vulture population was a result of scavengers feeding on the carcasses of livestock that were given dio dioxyphenac, a type of painkiller. This caused the vultures to suffer from irreversible kidney failure, causing their deaths. As a result, there were not enough vultures for the disposal of the dead. That's horrible, in a matter of speaking, right? Yeah. Like, I feel bad, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, is it weird to feel bad for that type of specific thing? I'm not sure. While some in the Parsi community may have decided to adopt other forms of funerary practices, such as burial or cremation, others are taking steps to maintain the tradition, for instance, by constructing aviaries where vultures could live and breed near the towers of silence. And here we have another picture of the beautiful landscape of the Zoroastrian Towers of Silence in Yards, Iran. So, Zoroastrian, that's a very interesting religion. I may have to look more into that. But let us continue on the main article. Alrighty. Now, this image we have here is German anthropologist Bruno Berger conducting anthropomorphic studies as part of his work with the Nazis in their scientific studies to prove the superiority of the Aryan German race as opposed to that of the racially inferior redacted race. the Aryan become distorted. Uh, Nazi ideology and race theory. The use of the term Aryan has a long and complicated legacy that extends from ancient history into modern era. For instance, in the Indian epic the Ramayana, um, the demon king Ravana refers to himself as an Arya. Some scholars believe this could have been because he belonged to the highest caste or because he acted honorably, while others argue that it reflects an ancient usage of a term to denote a community or tribe. At some point in history, the term Aryan translated from its original use as an Indo Iranian term to describe a language to being applied to an Indo European peoples. The theory that these ancient European peoples originated from the frigid north and conquered all of Eurasia gave rise to the notion that they were Aryans. Due to lack of any scientific or concrete evidence, this theory has been largely debunked by modern scholars. Nevertheless, the concept of the Aryan race continued to evolve over time and became deeply embedded in certain ideologies and beliefs, leading to widespread discrimination and prejudice. Over time, the meaning of the word became muddled and misappropriated for political purposes. By drawing on the 20th century, the idea of the Aryan race had become entangled with notions of nobility and superiority. These ideas were embraced by some and misused by others, including the Nazis, who sought to promote their twisted ideology of racial purity. The concept of the concept of legitimacy and superiority has often been associated with age and antiquity. Thus, the Nazi Germans found it convenient to declare themselves the descendants of the ancient and noble so called Aryan race. Hmm. It's all just for show. It's all just for show. Hold on. Before I continue, we got some comments over on Rumble. Thank you for the comments. I'll check that out afterwards, Mr. Reza. According to this line of thinking, the Aryan race, believed to be the most superior race in the racial hierarchy who once ruled all of Eurasia, this pseudo scientific propaganda served as a powerful tool for Nazis to promote their ideologies of racial superiority and achieve their political ends, ultimately leading to the atrocities of the Holocaust. Please note that today the appropriate term is Proto Indo European languages and implies not that one language conquered and influenced all the others, but rather that many ancient languages in Eurasia seem to share common origins. Uh, Pi subcategories include Proto Celtic, Proto Baltic Slavic, Proto Greek, and Proto Indo Iranian. The Indo Iranian language can be found under this last category. Certain neo Nazi groups still posit that the Aryan race is German or Nordic, but that is not supported by any historical or archaeological evidence. And I mean, you have the Black Lives Matter groups, you have all these groups still saying this same nonsense about, white people want to bring the Aryan race and all this nonsense. And we now know that it's the whole term Aryan has its basis in language and really basis in India and Iran. It has nothing to do with Europe. But we're gonna fall off on kind of get understanding Eurasia, because this is also something that is funny about Eurasia in regards to the whole concept of of the Aryans. right? This article was written June 13th, 2015. When modern Eurasia was born, genetics yield clues to origins of Eurasians. Uh, was it a massive migration, or was it rather a slow and persistent seeping of people, items, and ideas that laid the foundation for the demographic map of Europe and Central Asia that we see today? The Bronze Age, which is from about 5,000 to 3,000 years ago, was a period with large cultural upheavals, but just how these upheavals came to have remained shrouded in mystery. Assistant Professor Morten Allentoft from the Center of Genogenetics at the Natural History Museum of Denmark at the University of Copenhagen is a geneticist and first author on the paper in Nature. He says both archaeologists and linguists have had theories about how cultures and languages have spread in our part of the world. We geneticists have now collaborated with them to publish an exploration based on the record amount of DNA analysis of skeletons from the Bronze Age. And here we have a picture of Bronze Age skeletons from Cliff's End Farm in Ramsgate, England. So far, archaeologists have been divided into two different camps. Professor Christensen of the University of Copenhagen, of Gothenburg, who initiated the project together with Lundbeck Foundation, Professor S. Willersev, says, the driving force in our study was to understand the big economical and social changes that happened at the beginning of the third millennium BC, spanning the Urals of Scandinavia. The old Neolithic farming cultures were replaced by a completely new perception of family, property, and personhood. I and other archaeologists share the opinion that these changes came as a result of massive migrations. With this new investigation, the researchers confirmed that the changes came about as a result of migrations. The researchers think that it is interesting also because later developments in the Bronze Age are a continuation of this new social perception. Things add up because the migrations can also explain the origin of the Northern European language families. Both language and genetics have been with us all the way up to present. Christensen even thinks that it was crucial events that happened during these few centuries, as crucial as the colonization of the Americas. One of the main findings from the study is how these migrations resulted in huge changes to the European gene pool, in particular confirming a large degree of admixture on the present populations. Generally speaking, ancient Europeans from the time post these migrations are much more similar to modern Europeans than those prior to Bronze Age. Modern warrior people. The rewriting of genetic map began in the early Bronze Age, about 5,000 years ago. From the steppes in the Caucasus, the Yamana culture migrated principally western into North and Central Europe, and to a lesser degree, Western Siberia. The Yamani culture, if you are of white descent, if you are a white person, and you want to know your origins of whiteness, then research the Yamani culture, and you will learn the true origins of your race. In Northern Europe, the Yamani mixed with the Stone Age people who inhabited this region and along the way established the cordware culture, which genetically speaking resembles present-day Europeans living north of Alps today. Later, about 4,000 years ago, Sintashta culture evolved in the Caucasus. This culture's sophisticated new weapons and chariots were rapidly expanding across Europe. The area east of the Urals and far into Central Asia was colonized around 3,800 years ago by the Androvo culture. The researchers' investigation shows that the culture had a European DNA background. During the last part of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age, East Asian peoples arrived in Central Asia. Here, it is not genetic admixture we see, but rather replacement of genes. The European genes in the area disappear. Here we have a illustration of Bronze Age warriors. A new scale. These new results derive from DNA analysis of skeletons excavated across large areas of Europe and Asia, thus enabling these cultural glimpses into the dynamics of the Bronze Age. In addition to the population movement insights, the data also held other surprises. For example, contrary to the research team's expectations, the data revealed that lactose intolerance rose to high frequency in Europeans, in comparison to prior belief that it evolved earlier in time 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. Co-author and associate professor Martin Sikora from the Center for Geogenetics says, previously the common belief that lactose intolerance developed in Balkans or in the Middle East in connection with the induction of farming during the Stone Age. But now we can see that even late in the Bronze Age, the mutation that gives rise to the tolerance is rare in Europe. We think that it may have been introduced into Europe with the Yamani herders from Caucasus, but that the selection that has made most Europeans lactose tolerant has happened at a much later time. The paper in Nature not only gives us a glimpse into the Bronze Age, it is also the first time an actual population evolutionary study back in time has been made to this extent. Geneticist and the director of the Center of Geogenesis, Esque Welfevs, elaborates. Our study is the first real large-scale population genomic study ever undertaken on ancient individuals. We analyzed genome sequence data from 101 past individuals. This is more than a doubling of the number of genomic sequence individuals as prehistoric man generated to date. The study was without any comparison to anything previously made. The results show that the genetic composition and distribution of peoples in Europe and Asia today is surprisingly late phenomenon, only a few thousand years old. And so, you know, we have just dispelled this whole idea of the Aryan race. That was the whole point. To dispel the whole notion of the Aryan race and the whole story and concept behind it. Because this is what's to me very funny and ironic is the books, history books, everything, they push this lie when, excuse me, when the truth is really out there in the open. So now we know that the Aryan race had nothing to do with Nordics, had nothing to do with a superior race. It had to do with language and various cultures that inhabited various particular areas in Eurasia. So the next time you hear anyone talk out their ass in regards to the Aryan race, you can now correct them on it. And this is this also kind of is part of the reason why, like, I look at Black Lives Matters and those kind of groups as being very similar to white supremacist ideologies and ideas, because they practice the exact same things. They're no different than than Nazis in how they practice their propaganda and how they harass different groups. This is exactly what I'm trying to tell you. Um, you can't like you really have to do your due diligence when you get involved with these types of groups. You have to realize that many of them are practicing uh, propaganda and ideas that were already used by various other groups. And this is no different than our federal government and even at times um, local governments. Oh, wow. Uh, on some breaking news, Kevin McCarthy has been removed as the Speaker of the House of the U.S. Oh, boy. Things are, oh, man, that's crazy. Sorry, just some breaking news in case uh, nobody wasn't aware. But this is the whole thing. We're right now actively um destroying this idea of the Aryan race, but it also kind of destroys the credibility of the Black Lives Matter and those kind of groups because they're pushing the same type of tactics. And that's what I want individuals and people to be aware of is that these new groups, they're practicing the same tactics that the Nazis practice, that the intel agencies practice. In many ways, some of them they're all cut from the same cloth. So we can all kind of be rest assured and knowing that the whole idea of Aryan race is nonsense and it's stupid. And when you really understand the origins of it, you realize it has to do with language and culture, nothing to do with race. Even though it predominantly coincides with people uh, of who lived in either India or Iran who spoke a particular type of dialect. It's interesting. It really is. This is really fascinating. I truly enjoyed this. Um, if you guys really enjoyed this, please leave a comment, hit that like button, share it with anyone else out there so they can kind of be educated on the truth of this whole Aryan race. It's just all propaganda and manipulation tactics. So I highly recommend everyone out there. Bless you, Pablo. It's my old dog. He's sneezing up a storm. I highly recommend people out there just be extra mindful now of the propaganda of of the propaganda of the misinformation, especially when it comes to these supposed groups that have good intentions. When we're now learning that many of them have been co-opted by nefarious organizations. This is what's funny about all of this. The more and more you learn about the truth, the more and more the lies are just too funny and just so outrageous. So like I said, I highly recommend everyone out there um just be more mindful of the propaganda machine, be more mindful of the agendas, uh you know be mindful that this whole race war that they're trying to push on us is all to divide us. This has nothing to do with race. This is a economic war, a class war. Nothing to do with race. It's all a class war. It's economic war, and they use race as a way to dumb us down, to distract us. It's propaganda. So I really implore everyone out there, now that we understand the origins of uh, the term Aryan, we can be more rest assured in our intellect and our knowledge. So everyone out there, just be mindful and now know that the origin of the Aryan race is completely fabricated and built on propaganda and lies and racism. So and it just goes to say, even with the Black Lives Matter group, it's all propaganda. They're not a good group. They're not. They act no different than Nazi groups of old. I have no problem saying that. You can quote me on that, because they're acting no different than Nazi rampaging groups of the 30s and 40s. They're no different. They're using the same propaganda tactics, using the same tactics of revising history, the same tactics of this idea of superiority. So I just hope everyone out there, just be mindful of this. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't give into these groups. They're being run by the feds. They're being run by millionaire oligarchs and organizations, whether it's George Soros, whether it's the World Economic Forum, you name it. A lot of these groups, they're the ones that are pushing a lot of this division, a lot of the culture war, a lot of the racism. They have used the algorithm of Twitter and social media to basically manipulate and generate division and racism. It's completely unfortunate. But those of us out there who are people of uh, freedom of thought and freedom of individuality, we don't get caught up in this nonsense. We see it for what it is and we call it out. And we stay true to our morals and creeds and our ethics amongst the chaos. And it's not an easy thing to do. But I commend everyone who actively participates in being the best version of themselves by being better than yesterday. And that is all we can do. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. If you made it this far, and if you enjoyed the stream this far, and if you enjoyed the stream, please make sure to hit that like button. And if you are new to the channel, please subscribe and ring that notification bell. And make sure to follow me on social media. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.